Today we celebrate the dedication of our cathedral in Birmingham, the cathedral dedicated to St. Chad. When Catholics have restored proper dioceses in England, we've wanted to place the bishops' sees in towns of contemporary importance, but also link them to deeper historical connections. We do this because the Catholic faith is not altogether new to England. It's very ancient. So a new diocese was set up centred on Birmingham, but a connection made with the 7th century saint, St. Chad, who had been bishop at Lichfield, just to the north of Birmingham. But even if our faith is ancient to England, it's also ever new. Christianity is something that is replanted over and over again in our history, just as we need to replant it today. It was the same in the time of St. Chad and his brother St. Ced. Essex had been Christian, but had apostatized. But then they wanted to be Christian again, and Ced took on the work of re-evangelization there as their new bishop. Ced was already abbot of a monastery in Northumbria, and when he was near to death, he had his brother Chad made its new abbot. Northumbria, in the northeast of England, was another area that had been converted, but apostatized, and was in a process of re-Christianization. Chad, too, was made a bishop. The king had gotten impatient while St. Wilfrid had gone off to France to be consecrated Archbishop of York. So he wanted Chad to be the bishop instead, and Chad got himself irregularly consecrated. I don't imagine Wilfrid was too impressed on arriving back in York. And when the new Archbishop of Canterbury, St. Theodore, arrived in England, he made it clear to Chad that his consecration was irregular. But Chad's reply was so humble that Theodore immediately decided to regularize Chad's consecration. After spending some time back in the monastery, Chad spent the last 2.5 years of his life working as a bishop for the Kingdom of Mercia with his see at Lichfield. Mercia covered roughly the same area that our Archdiocese of Birmingham does today. St. Theodore became a great supporter of Chad's and sometimes had to personally force Chad to get on a horse. The humble Chad wanted to go about preaching on foot, even for long journeys, but Theodore was determined that on these he would get about more efficiently by horse. The Mercians had been gradually converted, and King Oswy of Northumbria had become their king too and made them officially Christian. After the Mercians had successfully rebelled against Oswy, they decided to stay Christian anyway. This area had, of course, once been Christian before the invasion of the Mercians. When a relatively new diocese like Birmingham connects itself with an ancient bishop like Chad, it seems to me that we can remind ourselves that, as in the time of Chad, the faith may be old, but it is also ever new. And the challenge of re-evangelization in a de-Christianized land is not a complete novelty, but something in which we in this part of the world have great predecessors. As we see the need to re-evangelize once more, let us take inspiration from the example of these great predecessors and patrons, And let us call on them in our prayers for the place in which we live. And let us call in particular on St. Chad, whose relics lie in our own Cathedral of Birmingham, whose dedication we celebrate today.